You are listening to the Final Say Radio Show, a Rappaport media production, with your host Brett Rappaport and co-host John Rappaport.
Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Ashe Schow is an editorial writer with the Washington Examiner, and I want to welcome you to the Final Say Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Well, I have to tell you, last election cycle, in 2012, we were actually in Virginia, in Richmond, at the headquarters where the Senate campaign and Eric Cantor and others were running out of, and we did a radio show there that day. And for the most part, that was a good day. I know we didn't get the Senate seat, but we had some good things that happened there. And I think this is incredibly surprising. And so I have a whole host of questions for you on this. And you guys weren't so surprised by this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and what you've been covering for the months leading up to this. And also, I'd certainly love to, and I know you've written about this, who are some of the potential people who will be facing off against Dave Brat?
Well, going into this, I personally wasn't writing about it. I thought this was going to be a sleeper campaign election, that, Cantor will just get reelected and that'll be that. And then, it gets to be Tuesday night and I wasn't even paying attention. I just happened to check Twitter and see that he was about to lose, and then suddenly it was just, became ridiculous. It was absurd. Since then, a lot has been written about what was the downfall, what was the cause, and, people saying that it's immigration or his stance on big business, or he didn't disapprove of Obamacare enough, I think somebody was saying. It's kind of weird. The bottom line, in all honesty, it was the voters. Like, the voters caused it, Brat got more votes, that's about it. But, beyond that, it's really too early to tell just what really happened. It's a combination of everything.
And I agree with you. I've heard, I listen to Larry Kudlow every Saturday on the weekend. I love him, but he was thinking that it had a lot to do with the immigration type story, and other people think that it has to do with the fact that Republican leadership has ignored even though they claim to be conservatives, they've ignored or battled with the more conservative wing of the party. And of course, it could be a little bit of 15 different reasons, of course. And I think, that it'll eventually leak out or become more obvious to us.
Right. We can't claim that there's that this is the beginning of a trend when nothing's happened since. They're trying to say this is means that immigration is going to be a losing issue for Republicans, but Lindsey Graham has been completely fine with immigration, and he won his election. And even if you want to say that there were 6 people running against him to split the vote, Cantor was somebody completely unknown was running against Cantor. So, and Lindsey Graham got more than 50%. So even if there had been one other person running against him, if there was only 1, not 6, he still would have won. So you can't say that immigration is going to be this or that issue going into November, because we just don't have a trend right now. We might end up, there's more primaries, but right now it's just not there.
I agree with you totally, and I'd also add this. Some Tea Party groups I support, and others I don't. It just depends on what some I think are just Tea Party in name only, and don't. It's hard to tell what they really stand for, and others do fabulous work. But every time there's an election, you hear, "Oh, the Tea Party's dead, the Tea Party's alive, the Tea Party's taken over," and I said this the other day. I don't care if you're progressive, you're liberal, you're moderate, you're Tea Party, you're this, you're that. Everybody has their good and bad days. Everybody has their particular issues and spots that they're going to do well in. And I don't think I think all these ideas have existed for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's all been ongoing philosophy. It's just different names in different places. And like you said, sometimes you're going to have an upset like this that you just didn't see coming. And you could look at other places, like we wonder how somebody's still in office, like Charlie Rangel in New York. He's there for 40 or 50 years already, and you're wondering how the guy was there in the first place, and he's still winning these elections no matter what kind of trouble he gets himself into. So
exactly.
Go figure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, some just like Democrats, had a really bad day in 2010 when the Republicans took over. I mean, Republicans had that bad day in 2006 and in 2008 and in 2012. So, I mean, it's just, at that time we didn't say, well, I think there was liberals saying that the Republican Party was dead, but, and then in 2010, I believe, Republicans were probably saying liberalism is dead and people are waking up. I mean, you just say it like for every election. It's just whoever loses, well, their arguments are dead. This proves that our arguments are what the people want, when it really never seems to prove that at all. I mean, you see the polls constantly showing that Americans are not happy with Obamacare, yet when Obama won in 2012, he was going out there saying, this proves that Americans want Obamacare. So, I mean, it just, I don't even, anything you can write about this, any kind of analysis is just, everything is really so nuanced that you can't get a very definitive, this is what this means, ever.
Right. No, and I agree with you on that. So you have a few people that I saw you were writing about who are potentially going to be running against Dave Bratt. And can you give us a little background on some of these people? And what is this a safe seat for the Republicans? Is Dave Bratt going to have to fight very hard to keep this, or give us a little bit of insight into this?
Well, it's pretty well believed that it's going to remain a Republican seat. It's an R+10 district. But then again, it was a pretty well-believed point that Cantor would keep it. So, But because it's an R+12 district, it's very red. Unless Dave Bratt really has like a Todd Aiken moment, he's probably going to sail through. And let's remember that it was pretty much, I believe it was over the weekend that Democrats were like, nah, we should probably put someone up just to be the sacrificial lamb. And then Monday they decided on Jack Trammell, who's a professor at the same college that Dave Bratt is. And they just kind of decided on him, put him up, made him a Twitter account, made him a Facebook page, made him a campaign website. All happened Monday. He officially was announcing his campaign on Tuesday. I mean, there's nothing about his stance on the issues yet anywhere. I mean, you're just going, there's a 4-paragraph bio up on the website. You can sign up for emails and you can donate, of course. With him, he's a novelist. He's published a couple dozen books and chapters in books, and he's actually working on a novel about vampires right now.
I'm just reading that right now, and I'm sorry to jump in. I'm reading that right as you're saying it, and I'm just thinking of, is this the Democrat version of Christine O'Donnell?
Right. I'm not a vampire, but I do write about them. Future campaign ad, I mean, he hasn't even filed with the Federal Election Commission. They haven't received records of his campaign raising any money or spending any money, and that could be because it's under the $5,000 reporting limit, or that they just haven't received his paperwork, or he's done nothing. I mean, I'm sure he's got money behind him now, some, but I don't think Democrats, even if this is probably their best shot to get this district in God only knows how long, they're probably still not going to put a whole lot of money behind it just because it is such a red district. But besides Trammell, we also have a libertarian, because there's always a libertarian now, James Carr, who he begins his campaign website kind of, I found it kind of odd. I mean, he's saying, why should you have to accept socially intolerant ideas in order to vote for someone that meets your own fiscally conservative stance? on the other side, do you have to accept a tax and spend approach to financial management in order to support your social freedoms? And he's like, well, there's a better choice, James Carr, the libertarian. And, I mean, he goes on, he at least has his stance on the issues, on abortion, gun rights, minimum wage, defense. I mean, he has a stance on all kinds of things. So even though no one had ever heard of him prior to this, he's got a better campaign set up than the Democrat.
So I hope that this isn't a scenario where the Libertarian, and usually it's not the case, but where the Libertarian steals too many votes from the Republican. And I see you have another fellow, Mike Dickinson, who's the independent. Is he even on the ballot, or?
You know, the elections, Board of Elections didn't get back to me when I asked yesterday. It doesn't appear he is, because he failed to file to run as a Democrat at the mail deadline. But he's still claiming he's running and that he's been running since January. He's tweeting out that he's running. So best I can figure is he's either on the ballot as an independent or he's trying to run a really fierce write-in campaign. But this guy is one to watch for gaffes. I mean, earlier this year, he was just sitting around playing the, who would you sleep with, who would you marry, and who would you kill high school game on Twitter with, like, members of Congress and the Republican Party. I mean, he had one tweet about playing that game with, I think it was Michelle Malkin, Elizabeth Hasselbeck, and Sarah Palin. You know, it's just you're claiming that you're some kind of serious candidate and you're doing this kind of stuff on Twitter. And also, he's running in, again, that R+10 district, and he tweets out things where he says, I love Obamacare, or I love the Affordable Care Act. I love Barack Obama. We don't need a Democrat who's just a Democrat in name only and going to vote with Republicans. We need a Democrat that's going to completely, like, promote Obama's agenda, and that's what I would do. And it's just, do you know who your constituents are? Like, one of the reasons they possibly didn't like Eric Cantor was that they didn't think he was conservative enough, and you're trying to be, like, the most liberal. I mean, you're running on the left of Charlie Rangel, basically, at this point.
Well, he sounds like he's trying to bid for the job of Alan Grayson or Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Right, basically. The Alan. Someone actually called him that, I believe. Talking Points memo or somebody, I believe, actually wrote an article, probably Daily Kos, that wrote an article calling him the next Alan Grayson. And it's like, yeah, he can. That if that's something to aspire to, sure.
Well, and amazingly that he's back in office. Grayson won his seat again, right?
He did. He won it back.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, I'm just shaking my head because, I just think of the fellow Johnson from was it Georgia, South Carolina, who was talking about if we put too many troops on Guam, it would flip over. Yeah, I just think of all the crazy things that we've heard from some of these people over the years.
Oh, right. And they don't get called on it like the Republicans do. So
no, that's for certain. That's for certain. And but that's why we cover all this stuff, so we can clear the record, right?
And
so I'm sorry. I did note, if you don't mind, I noticed that you were covering a few other issues that you were writing about. And would you have a few moments to comment on? For one, you were discussing the world is less violent, as Obama claims, and you're referring to what's going on right now in Iraq and Ukraine. And I think it's shocking, some of the statements, not just from Barack Obama himself, but from members such as John Kerry in the administration, or even listen to Hillary Clinton while she's out trying to sell her books, that it's almost like they're living in an alternative universe. And what we're watching is the unfolding of civil wars and whatnot in multiple countries. We already have some going on. And it's where entire regions could be ablaze. And These guys are like, well, we're going to consider the options and think about if we want to do something about it. I'm like, really?
Right. Well, they're really hoping that if they just ignore it, that the media won't cover it, and then Americans won't know about it, and they can just go on claiming that Al-Qaeda's on the run, or, Obama, officially ended the war in Iraq. I believe it was 2010, and then he called for the troops to come home in 2011. So that means everything was over. We maybe not won, but we did our job, and the war is over. And now, of course, he's talking about sending, they're talking about this fund, this counterterrorism fund that he was talking about late last month, that was supposed to go to help Syria, Yemen fight against Al-Qaeda, all these different countries. Iraq was never mentioned. Now he wants some of that money to be used in Iraq because, the situation's not great over there, despite the war being over, supposedly.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's two things that I've been discussing on the program over the last few days, and the first is the fact that this administration completely failed in establishing a status of forces agreement with Iraq, and basically just pulled out and said, okay, it is what it is. And all of us, whether we wanted to be there or not, understood that if you just walk away, that you're just inviting trouble. And the other thing is, and I'm watching various networks covering it, that, ISIS is so extreme that even Al-Qaeda didn't want to affiliate with them. And I think that's utter nonsense, because I just look at it as, China uses North Korea for an obvious purpose, and they try to keep a certain level of separation for obvious reasons. And I think it's the same thing. All these groups have a very similar agenda, and it's almost like they're anti-humanity, just to say it nicely. And
right.
They don't, whatever gets in their way, they will walk all over regardless. So what's the difference if one group cuts off 15 heads but the other cuts off 100? I mean, they're still all nuts.
Right. I mean, I'm kind of balking at the notion that Al-Qaeda is like, whoa. They are way, way too extreme for us. I just don't see that happening. Whereas it's like here in America, a conservative says something dumb, and then, people will condemn him. Like Ted Nugent will say something ridiculous, and we'll be like, stop. You're making the rest of us look bad. Like, I really don't believe that Al-Qaeda is looking at ISIS and saying, stop making us look bad, dude.
No, not at all. I just, look, I'm not in such a hurry to put American boots on the ground anywhere, but quite frankly, I think there's definitely a situation where we have to consider at least some air support for this government, and I'm not even sure which government we should be supporting in Iraq at this point. It's a terrible situation, but certainly to have an entire state, the state of Iraq I'm referring to fall in the hands of an extreme group is something that nobody wants. Right.
Definitely not. But we do, Obama probably send more drones. We do know that he's totally fine with that.
They did today in Pakistan.
Yep.
That's okay.
Right.
Look, I'm sorry. I was just going to say I don't mind the use of drones as long as they're killing, taking out these terrorist groups. I think that we just have to be mindful that we're not killing innocent civilians. But in some of these areas, it's really hard to determine who's innocent and who's not, which makes it very difficult.
Right.
But anyway, Ashe Schow, is there a website somewhere people could follow your stuff? And I know you do a lot of writing for the Washington Examiner, which is the WashingtonExaminer.com. But anywhere else you'd like to plug?
That you could also follow me on Twitter at Ashe Schow, and love more Twitter followers. Or check out my Facebook page. I believe it's facebook.com/Ashe.Schow.
Oh, so I've been pronouncing your last name wrong this whole time. It's Schow?
I don't mess with people anymore.
That's okay. Well, I'll remember for next time. Anyway,
right,
thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to reading more of your editorials.
Thanks.
All right, take care. Have a good day.